remember when I was just a kid, my folks, we'd go down to the river on Sundays. That's what the whole community did, this small community of rural people. And they would go down to the river and have a picnic and bathe in the water. And back then, before all the new environmental laws came in, you could wash your car in the creek. And of course, some of those mountain folks actually washed their kids in the creek, at least once a week. But I can remember, I could just remember those days in that river running clean back in, years ago, and it still runs clear, thanks to the fact that the government takes care of the property now. And it was just such a good feeling to go down there, and of course we had no electricity then, or television or any of that, so our entertainment was the river. And as a little child, you can find a lot of things to do on the river to keep you entertained, from crayfish to neat rocks and fossils and arrowheads and things like that. The river is a cornucopia of things to be discovered. There's a lot of wilderness between where our farm was and the river, but one of the great things I always look forward to in the summertime or in the spring was riding the horse down to the current river. And there are so many other trails that has a lot of adventure other than just the river. I mean, if you can imagine driving through on a major highway, that being representing the river, and you never get off the highway to see what else is there. That's kind of what it was like on that watershed valley where the river was. There's all kinds of springs, wildlife, rock caves, and different things that you could explore. But it was a great fun to just take my horse and ride in that quiet. Because when you're by yourself and you're isolated from extrasensory bombardment, it's amazing what you start discovering about yourself. Because it's just you and the horse. And the horse don't care. So there you are.
What's the most unusual experience you've had in that area?
On the river?
Any folklore or anything of that nature?
There's folklore up and down that river. I mean, this is just one of the folklore stories I used to hear when I hear my grandparents and my mother and dad talk about activity in that area. And that area covers a couple of counties, one of them being Shannon County. So the river runs through Shannon. And I always remember when I was 5 years old, they would talk about the hairy man of Shannon County. And of course, what they were talking about was another version of Bigfoot or, something of that sort. But it was always a fun story, much better than watching television to hear those old timers talk about that kind of folklore. It's amazing how your senses become sharpened when you get away from the extrasensory bombardment of our culture today and civilization. You get out of it, and it's actually a transition through time. It's amazing how it's like a time travel where you get back, you start seeing actual trees, the shapes, what they are, the different kinds of plants and wildlife. It is just another world. It is, and people who've never been in that kind of environment, urban folks, it's like going to another planet, but it's our very own planet. There's eagle, all kinds of hawks, owls, all kinds of little furry critters, wild boar, bear, deer, and now even we have elk on that river. So if you take the time and you spend some time on that river and you don't take your radio or your cell phone with you, you can have a wonderful time. Well, I spent all those years on that river, with the family. We would, at that time there wasn't much kayaks, we had old canoes, that went up and down the river, and a lot of adventure there. I remember one time taking a famous producer later on in life down that river, and I said, no matter what you do, you're in the front of the canoe. If we go into rapids, don't grab a limb above you. And it was fall, and it was running about maybe 40 degrees, and the first thing he did is put up his hand, and we just went right under. So you got to be careful when you're taking novices down the river. Make sure you're prepared and give them a little education before they start. But back then, growing up on the river, you learned how to do all that stuff. You just naturally did, And when I finally got out of school and was in college and decided that I wanted to play music, because my whole family was a musical tradition. That's what they all played. And my brother and I decided we wanted to do something with it because I didn't fit in with the social structure of a college. I was not an organized, I wasn't into organizations and that whole mainstream of thought that was happening then. And I said, I got to do this. I got to find out if I can do it. So we left home in a 55 Cadillac, me and 3 other crazy people, kids, and went to California with $9.50 in our pocket. That's another whole adventure there. But when we got to California, the first thing I did when I woke up in the back seat of that car and looked around me and saw this layer of ozone that you can only maybe see 4 or 5 feet in front of you, and having this smell of like an electric engine burning, the brushes burning. That was the Los Angeles environment. But we were so set and so passionate for what we wanted to do that we worked our way into the city and auditioned for the Andy Griffith Show. Hence, we're born out of that, the Darlings, out of the Dillards. And of course, that's become history. It's never been off the air for 55 years. But you can imagine a bunch of kids coming from the Ozarks, walking into that culture. It was like not a foreign country, it was like another planet to me. Because the value system was so different. Because people who grew up in that megalopolis of Southern California, the chickens that most of the people saw growing up were in a package and cut up nicely. And everything was laid out in the meat market so clean and so precise. Where we grew up, where you butchered a hog and you canned it. My mother would can sausage and everything. So to see that jump from the farm to the market, these kids, these unfortunate people, these people who grew up not seeing that, lost a touch with reality of what the earth is really like. Therefore, they are socially engineered. All that nature has been socially engineered out of a lot of people. So they have lost that ability to realize what the earth is. That's the truth.
I guess basically it's just defining the culture shock. I'm doing that.
Well, that's what I did. I would get out there, and they all thought we were very quaint because we spoke with an accent. You know, I've lost mine over the years to some degree. And they thought it was funny to see the hillbillies, you know. Because I think urban people get bored, and they're always looking for something new, especially in the entertainment business. Something new that can be exploited. And there was a lot of these, you know, I'll give you a fine example. Here we are out there, and I was in this petri dish of folk culture at the time. All the intellectuals would hang out there. And, you know, Ozark people are pretty simple. It's cut and dried. You know, you have life and death. You see it. You see things die. You see things being born. And it's a part of your natural upbringing. Well, people came up to me when I was first there and said, "What do you think of the existentialist dilemma?" I'd say, "Well, I don't know. I was raised Presbyterian." And they thought that was so cute. But that's what you would get. People who are so concerned with intellectually chasing their tail, looking for the truth. And the truth is right there if you just get on the river and float.
So when you finally were able to get back home, you know, you went out, you made it, all this stuff happened in this fast lane life. Was it a stark realization in comparison to that life, what you'd left behind when you came back to it?
You know what? There's a situation that, you know, maybe the argument between the less you know, the happier you are. You know, you take, for instance, an isolated community like someone in South America who's never seen an outsider. You know, do they become more happy when they're invaded by the Portuguese or whoever came into that and started tearing down the rainforest? Are they better off for that? Are the folks who move from the mountains to the city to take jobs so they can get these new shiny cars that they can't pay for and go back home? It's very difficult to go back home again once you've left. You know, how can you keep them down on the farm once they've seen, you know, the city? Well, there was a part of me that growing up in that part of the country always longed for, whether I could go out on the ocean and fish, or whether I could go up in the mountains and take my Land Cruiser up there and stay for a week. I had to be in touch with that nature again, touching the stone once more. And that gave me, that recharged me so I could go on and face all the social games that are played, the social reality, the game reality of living in a large population.
What are some of the features of the current river that stand out the best between springs and various points? What's your perception?
It's just it's a small spring, comes out of the mountains, and great trout fishing and things there. But as the river flows, other springs, other tributaries come down into it, and as it flows, it grows, and it becomes this pristine, beautiful river that's got rapids. It's amazing that you can look down into it, and it looks like a foot deep, and you step into it, and you're in about 15 feet of water. See, that's pure. That's pure. It's like pure thought. It's pure water. And the river is fed by several springs, major big springs that flow into that. And there's some high points like Welch Cave, where I can remember my grandfather and my mom and dad talking about our uncle who helped build that sanatorium where Welch Cave is, for people who thought that getting that fresh water out of the cave and that fresh air would help their lungs, you know. And that was back then when they didn't really know how to deal medically with a lot of problems. That was the turn of the century later on, you know, in the early days. But I think the health properties of that river is just removing that anxieties. You start removing the buffer that keeps you sane in an overpopulated culture. So you really do go back to the source of what, I wouldn't call it primal, but maybe I would. But it is like looking to a fireplace on a cold night, and how your thoughts go back maybe to ancient times in your head, who knows. But it gives you that primal feeling that's very difficult to describe unless you have the experience. And I would encourage anybody who is healthy and strong and wanted an adventure that wasn't video games to pick a river, learn how to manipulate the rapids, learn how to survive, start out slow, camp, and go from there. And you're really living life. It's like when you go down the river in an ice storm, you realize that you're really alive. And you're not sitting in some incubator, just sitting there ripening and eventually rotting.